Line's good.
Never on.
Whoa.
Hard. Hardly.
Come on, Brent.
Line's good.
Got real close.
I hear high, right?
Try and hit 2/3.
Have they saved it for her? Yes, they have.
Ooh, welcome to Game of Stones, everybody. I am Sean Graham. Scott alongside, as always. Hello, Scott.
Sean, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. How about you?
I found this booklet of notes that I took, and now I've got the task of trying to decipher them all.
Okay, what were these notes in reference to?
I don't even know. Oh, these aren't even all my notes.
Whose notes are they?
Oh, they're notes about our softball team.
Oh, interesting.
That's right. I got lineups here for a doubleheader back in June.
All right, I believe that was a split that night for us.
That was a split. Yeah, that's right. Tough one, but yeah, good memories.
Yeah, absolutely. And the season is now over for us in softball. Scott, the last time we spoke, we were about to play in the third place game. Turned out not to be the third place game. And turns out that I didn't play for our team the whole game. It was an interesting evening at the old ball.
An interesting evening, but Sean, as you put it, I think we just claim the bronze medal and say we did it. It's all good.
I think so.
Bronze medal, nothing wrong with that. Should be proud.
Yeah, we also finished third on that list that came out a couple weeks ago. Essentially, we've determined that we're the Team Gauthier of Curling Podcast, and I'm good with that.
Yeah, and that feels good, right? Feels right.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we turn our attention now to this upcoming curling season, games have already started to take place. There was the curling stadium event. There was the under 25 next gen event. There's been events in Oslo. Caitlin Laws, her team were there. So we thought we would revisit our annual tradition that we haven't done in a couple of years of looking at team schedules and breaking them down, what teams are doing as they prepare for that season to champions in January and February, with all eyes, of course, eventually on those world championships, and see who will play in those. Of course, for this exercise, we do look primarily, and this year exclusively, at the Canadian teams, in part to see where teams are playing, but also based off of TV events, the non-TV events, and they don't have the same commitments in the fall, certainly as the European or the Asian teams. Well, I guess the Asian teams did with the PACs no longer going on. But with the European teams, most of them, of course, have to go home for the Euros that take place in November. So a little different scheduling priorities for the Canadian team. So, Scott, I think it's always fun to look at this at the start of the season.
Yeah, it's always fun to see, which teams have picked out events to try and qualify for Grand Slams versus the teams that pretty much have already qualified. They're going to be there, but they still have to put an asterisk on their schedule saying pending qualification. Mm-hmm. It's interesting to see that some teams, like you say, with new teams having formed, we could take a look at their upcoming schedules to gauge how it's going to be different or the same from years past. So it's an interesting way to look at it. You can tell which teams are very comfortable with their position, which teams will be trying to fight to get as many points as they can in the first year, where they're able to get into the Grand Slams and then sort of build that momentum going into the years that matter, shall we say.
Yeah, because this year doesn't really matter for anything, especially now with the no Canada Cup on the schedule this year. Of course, the first year of a quad, the Canada Cup was only a guaranteed entry into the pre-trials. But without even that this year, there really is absolutely no connection to the Olympic Games with this season coming up. So this really is a chance for the teams to test things out, learn how their dynamics are. Obviously, you want to win, but it is part of the growing process here. And we have some new events on the schedule this year, the curling stadium events, We have the points bet spiel. So more TV things going on, and a lot of players trying to mix into their mixed doubles commitments. So I have to try to find balance to figure out when they're going to play in those events too. So it really is a loaded up schedule here for the fall. And we are only looking at the fall because when the teams announce, they basically stop at their provincial playdowns, and that's basically it. All those events, of course, have the asterisks on them that they do require qualification. Now, before we get into some of these schedules, Scott, there was the announcement made by the World Curling Federation over the weekend that there is a change in how the points are going to be calculated for the world team rankings. Mike McEwen was not too pleased with this, called it a, quote, shit show, hashtag shit show. That's how you know he's serious. I could see his point that a change in how the points are being calculated, being released in September, as teams have not only already committed to schedules, but also have already played events, and the changes will revert back to events that have already been played. Ultimately, the thing that's changing is the event strength of field qualifier is being rounded down to the nearest 0.5, and that will obviously affect some of the teams. I believe there's also a change, Scott, in how carryover points from the previous season will hold. There was concern that, hey, if you won the final Grand Slam, if you won the World Championship, those points didn't carry as long as a cash spiel event point would in September, because it was like a 5 or 6 month carryover, whatever it was. So that is now going to change. Those points from the end of season events will carry on a little longer. They also have provisions in place for new teams and how long you can carry in your points from the previous season. They also have a specific formula for 5-person teams, depending on what the rotation is within the 5-person team in terms of whose points will be added for all that stuff. Ultimately, Scott, does any of this make any sense to you as just a fan in terms of following it and trying to keep track of it? And two, is this something that it seems so egregious that people should be upset about it?
I think for players that follow these numbers and sort of plan out their schedules, as we're going to talk about, maybe based on which events can net them the most points, right? Which events have the highest strength of field multipliers. Yeah, it's not great. It doesn't seem to me like anything is going to change like a whole lot. I mean, you can tell me if I'm wrong, right? So that, yeah, we'll have to see. One of the things they also did was to make sure that the World Championships and the Olympic Games and the Grand Slam events all have a set strength of field multiplier to ensure the highest profile events for the sport bring the most world ranking points, which that's the part that I can understand the teams being upset about, because they're playing in other events to try and get into these events, to try and qualify for Grand Slams and Worlds, and not having the opportunity for every team to get to that kind of event is pretty tough.
Yeah.
So I think from a player perspective, yes. From a fan perspective, we shouldn't really care.
Yeah, it'll change things on the margins. Potentially a team could get hosed here or there in terms of getting into a slam. There is the potential that could happen. But yeah, as from the fan perspective, I don't think it's super critical. I do like that with the set point events at the Players Championship is a 10, as is the World Championship. And then the Masters, National, and the Open are 9, and the Tour Challenge and the Champions Cup are at 8. I understand why the Champions Cup is an 8. If you could explain to me the difference between the Players Championship, the Masters, the National, and Open, why that should be different, please. I'm all ears on that. National Championships, maximum of 9 points. Euros, Pan-Continental, maximum of 9, or not points, excuse me, of the multiplier, strength of field multiplier. So that's kind of how it goes. A Tour Spiel, the max multiplier will be a 7. And a lot of the events that we're going to talk about today will be 7. So so there's something for the teams to worry about. Not great. It's one of these things too where the players and the respective overseeing bodies, whether the WCF or in Canada, Curling Canada, USA Curl, there is a lot of friction there between a lot of the high-end players and these associations. And I think this is just another example of that. The players want more of their voice to be reflected in these types of decisions.
Yeah. That's what the frustration is. It's wanting for the voices to be heard. Mike McEwen obviously feels like it's not happening right now. So I think that's where the frustration is.
Yeah. Well, with that, let's talk about where teams are going to play. So I've pulled the schedules of 6 teams with very different priorities, I think, for this upcoming season. And in some cases, we're going to look back at what they've done in the past and what is different, what is new, and what is common amongst all 6 of these teams. So, Scott, let us start with the very new look Team Homan. And this year for 2022-2023, they're going to play in 8 events, 5 what I'm calling TV events, which means they're going to be on a broadcast television, and then 3 events that are not going to be on broadcast television. One of them coming up this weekend out in Edmonton, the Saville Shootout. Then they're playing the Autumn Gold Classic in Calgary and the Red Deer Curling Classic, the former at the end of October, finishing on Halloween, the latter from the 18th of November through the 21st. Then you have the big events of the slams there, as well as what they're calling the Curling Canada Invitational. They are sponsored by Coolbet. So that explains that. So 8 events total before you get to the Ontario Provincial Playdowns in January. They are taking a week off before the provincial playdowns after the open slam. So it's got 8 events for Team Homan. New team, obviously, going to figure it out how it's going to go with Tracy calling the game, Rachel throwing last. Do you think this is a good number of events for them?
Yeah, looking at the schedule, what stands out to me, obviously the number of events is good. They're going to need to have some time to gel a bit, excuse me, on the ice and figure out the dynamic of the new team. So it's good to see them getting into a lot of events. They are staying mostly in the West. That's to be expected, I guess, with most of them living further west. But the only reason they come back to Ontario is for Grand Slam events or the Ontario Provincials. So that's something that sticks out to me about this. What about you?
Yeah, every event that isn't a TV event is in Alberta that they're playing, and everything else is sort of you're governed based on where those events are, and they're the biggest high-profile events, so you're going to play in them. So Fredericton, North Bay, Oakville, and then of course, as you say, coming back to Ontario for the playdowns. But it makes sense. That's where they live. So you're going to be in Alberta. It just from even just a cost perspective, it's the cheapest thing to do is to fly Emma and Tracy to Alberta. That's the most economical way to set your schedule.
Yeah, it is. It makes a lot of sense. That's where the big events are going to be. Are you a little surprised there's no Stu Sells event or a similar style event in Ontario?
No, I'm not. So last year they played in the Sherwood Park event from from September 17th to 21st or something. I feel like that type of event gets sacrificed for the points bet spiel for that invitational. So that's kind of the trade-off that you have there. So that it just kind of makes sense to me that's something that you're gonna drop there. And again, to go play in Oakville or Toronto, they all have to travel there, right? Like it's even for Emma, that's a bit of a ways to go. And when you have enough other events that you can play in, I don't know if there's really a benefit to it.
Okay. Yeah. I just a little curious from my glancing at the schedule. Sean, not related to the schedule, what do you think of Team Homan's logo, their new logo?
I like it. I really do like it. It's a T and an H together. So the left, as you look at the left half of the H is the T, and then the right line of the H is the Peace Tower on Parliament Hill. So really leaning into their Ottawa roots, Scott.
Yeah, that's curious to me. Uh,
Why?
well, I don't know if are they trying to legitimize that they're truly the Ontario team? Like,
Yeah,
is
probably.
that's it's a little strange to me, but it is nice, like a pretty cool logo. I like when teams come up with different ways to represent themselves, and
They're
the
they're
maple
uh,
leaf.
they're almost in the shadow of the Peace Tower. If you walk 30 seconds out of the Ottawa Curling Club, where they are ostensibly playing out of, you can see the Peace Tower.
Yeah, I know that. Um, but anyway, I just wanted your thoughts on it. It's also within a maple leaf,
Yes.
the TH logo, so really cool and Canadian of them. Anyway,
Yeah, and their schedule is over Rachel Homan's face in their and the Twitter image they decided to use. A very determined Rachel Homan in the midst of a shot.
that's true.
So there you have it, Team Homan's schedule for the 2022-2023 season. Let's go on to another experienced skip who is bringing in a new lineup. That's Kevin Koe, Scott. 22-23 schedule, of course, bringing in Tyler Tardy to play third and Brad Thiessen and Carrick Martin on the front end. They are also going to play in 8 events prior to the Alberta Playdowns coming up in February. They're going to play in 5 TV events, the same 5 TV events as Team Homan's, that being the PointsBet Invitational and the Slams. For their non-TV events, they are playing in the Okotoks Classic out there in Okotoks, Alberta. They're going to play in an event at the start of November in Penticton, and then the Red Deer event in November 18th to the 21st. So similar to Team Homan, they are not going to come east other than for TV events, but they're also going to Penticton, which makes sense for Tyler Tardy. Also makes sense when we talk about some of the other teams who are going to be playing in that event. So, Scott, again, really focused here on the TV events for these guys. This will really be Tyler Tardy's first time automatically getting into these events. Obviously, he's played in slams here and there. This will be his first time playing the full slate.
Yeah, and I like what they've done here, loading up on events similar to Team Homan in the fall, because as you said, it's a new lineup. It's going to be a new dynamic. We saw Kevin Koe's team struggle coming out of the chute last time they made a big shakeup. So it's good for them to get some matches under their belts. I also like that there's no back-to-back weeks except for the first one with the Okotoks and then the PointsBet Spiel. So they've got at least a week off in between everything. I think that's smart. So you're pushing yourself to get better as a team, but also not burning yourself out leading up to those playdowns in February.
Yeah, absolutely. And another sort of interesting note from Kevin Koe, in 2020, of course, we can't really take anything from 2022 too much as a gospel in terms of schedule making, but he did play in, or was scheduled to play at least in, Okotoks, Penticton, and Red Deer. So these are 3 spiels that he's played in before.
Yeah.
And you see this a lot where people find the spiels that they like on those cash spiels, and they're just going to go back to them over and over again. And that's the case here with Koe playing in those 3 events that he's played in before.
Yeah, and that event in Penticton is quite good, right? It seems like it's gotten bigger and better every year the last couple of years, and the field is quite strong. So
it'll be a 7. Like it'll be a 7 on the multiplier. Like I think it'll max out for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, let's move on to another team that is newly formed, coming together, first season together. That's Caitlin Laws And her team, of course, Caitlin Laws, is pregnant as well, which potentially throws a wrench into some of these plans. But as Rachel Homan demonstrated, you can have a baby and come back and win stuff very quickly. Of course, if you take time off too, there's nothing wrong with that either. So we'll have to see what Caitlin Laws decides for herself moving forward over the course of the season. But their schedule has 10 events on it. The 5 TV events, of course, of the slams and the points bet. But they have already played their first event. They traveled over to Oslo, Norway for the Oslo Cup at the start of September. They're also playing in Winnipeg from September 14th to the 18th. The Autumn Gold, that'll probably be a 7 multiplier as well. That event in Calgary. They're going to head out to Halifax for the Stu Cells there. The DeKalb in Morris, Manitoba, that'll be close to a 7. That DeKalb as well. And then that leads them into the Manitoba Scotties at the end of January. Scott, this is the most travel that we've seen from anybody who we've talked about so far.
Yeah. And they are in all those Grand Slams, like you mentioned. It's a lot of travel. They played really well in Norway, Sean. They lost in the final to Team Hasselberg, but pretty strong showing from this first-year team. I like that they're getting their feet under them early while they still can. And then, we'll see how the Manitoba Scotties goes. But again, like you said, this is, what is this, 9 events you said, or 10? 10 events. It's a lot. It's a lot of curling, a lot of travel, as you mentioned. Going out or down east to Halifax is probably it's not something that we're going to see from all these teams going east, but glad to see it. And if they're just trying to get as much time together on the ice as possible, then they've accomplished it with this. We'll just have to see if they run out of gas a little bit come February.
Well, they do have a lot of time off from that Halifax spiel. That ends on November 13th, and then they're taking a couple weeks off, not playing again until the DeKalb spiel. So they get that break in there, and then a month over Christmas from the 10th, if they make the final of the Masters, until the Open starts. So they do have a couple long breaks in there as we head into the back half of the season. I should also note, too, that when we say for all 3 of these teams we talked about so far, the number of events, that doesn't include their provincial playdowns, the Players' Championship, or the Champions Cup. So add at least 3 for all of them, maybe some of them don't qualify for the Champions Cup. It's possible. And then they'll probably all be at the Scotties and the Brier if we keep the 3 wildcard teams, which I don't know if that's been formally announced yet, if they're returning to the old format or not, but that's something to keep an eye on too. So yeah, these are pretty loaded schedules.
Yeah, so far pretty loaded, but a lot of new teams, right? So you need to spend some time together on the ice.
Yeah. I'll also note too, in terms of how they're doing the asterisks, is just the asterisks update here. So Team Homan had an asterisk next to the Scotties and the World Championships for whether or not they would actually play in them, as well as the Champions Cup. That's where they put their asterisks. For Team Koe, an asterisk next to all of the slams, and then the Brier and the World Championship as well. So they're not calling their shot as much as Rachel Homan is.
Yeah. Do you think it's because Tyler doesn't have as many points that he's bringing to the team?
It's possible. Or they're just, really cautious. Don't want to.
Yeah. They don't want to brag too much about, hey guys, we're definitely getting in this event. So,
but Caitlin Laws, no asterisks at all. They're playing in everything.
Yeah,
that's confidence. I like it.
Yeah, it's confidence. They don't list the World Championships, but they get the Scotties on there. So.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I guess they don't think they're going to win it. They'll play in it. Not time to win it yet.
Scotties. They're not going to qualify. Yeah.
So that's a little update there on where things stand. All right, let's go over to another team that is new for the season, but all players have a lot of experience. That is Team Carruthers. And oh my goodness, they are fully loaded as well. I should note they also did not put the World Championship on their schedule as a potential must qualify event. They do have the Briar on there as a must qualify, though. And that's actually, I believe, that and the Champions Cup are their only two asterisk spiels that they have. But there are 11 events, the 5 TV spiels before and after Christmas, before the season of Champions. For their non-TV schedule, they're playing this upcoming week, at the Curling Stadium, Alberta Curling Series Major. There's one too many words in that name, but that's going on out in Leduc. They're playing at the Okotoks Spiel. They're also going to play in the Penticton Spiel and the Red Deer Spiel. They're also going to be at the DeKalb Spiel in Morris, Manitoba. And then the beauty is they're going down to Tempe, Arizona to play in that Ed Wernick Golden Wrench Classic, which from all accounts, it's you want to win, but I don't think that's why you're there from all accounts. So that's always just a good time for those teams to be in Arizona in January.
Yeah, that looks like oh boy, guys, we haven't played since early January, and our playdowns are coming up soon. Let's shake the rust off a bit. But you're right, Sean. This is a loaded schedule.
Yeah.
That's a lot of events. I know that Gunnar has a lot of energy, but I mean, even just out of the gate, between now and a month from now, they're playing in 4 events.
Yeah,
like that's a lot. That's a lot of curling, right?
it is.
Now the points bet invitational, right? It's not like a regular spiel. You could be one and done in that one, and it won't be the grind of 4 games and then maybe playoffs. So
right,
maybe they're like, we'll just pack in a few more just to see. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, maybe, but I should know. I and someone hopefully can correct me, because I can't get it on the spot. But I believe somebody has arranged in Fredericton for every team that loses their first game at that invitational at one of the clubs, they're having something for them. So for those, I guess 16 teams that lose in the first round, there's going to be something going on for them locally. So I won't be a pure one and done, I don't think. If that is in fact the case. But yeah, this is a ton of games with not too much geographic commonality here. They are traveling for this. Like, they're playing in that DeKalb Super Spiel. That ends on December the 5th. So if they make the final of that, they're in Morris, Manitoba on the 5th. The Masters starts on the 6th of December in Oakville. So this is going to be a lot of travel here. They're playing in mostly in the West, though, in the events that they're choosing. So it's sort of not crazy, but it's a lot to take in for them, I think.
Yeah, it's a lot. It is a lot of travel, but as you mentioned, I think these are there's no event here that makes you go, why are they playing in that? Right? I think everything makes sense. Maybe the Ed Wernick one, but I think you want to go to Arizona in January.
Scott, anyone who spent a winter on the prairies, the Tempe, Arizona Spiel in January, no one's wondering why. Those January days get pretty old pretty fast. So no one's going to turn up an eye at that. So a lot of games to be played, though, for Team Carruthers.
Sean, I asked you about Team Homan's logo. I haven't asked you about any of the others because they're not that interesting. But Team Carruthers logo, what do you think of that? It's got the buffalo inside the stylized maple leaf.
Yeah, I don't. The thing I don't know if I like about it is the blue. That's all. And I assume that's a Princess Auto thing as their principal sponsor. So it really works with their jerseys. Also, is the buffalo facing the wrong way? not the wrong way, but like would not be better if the buffalo is facing the other way, like kind of going with the maple leaf? Because right now it feels like the buffalo is like running against the maple leaf and they're like clashing in the middle.
I see what you mean, but to make sure that people know it's a buffalo, I think it had to be that way.
Yeah, all right, that's fair. I mean, it's not bad by any means.
No, I kind of like it, but when it's Carruthers, that's like a lot of letters to put in
It
in
is.
your logo, but there's not much you can do about it, right? Like, I
Unless
guess
he
you go,
changes his name. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's
So
fewer letters than Gunlickson. So
you're right. So it's winning. It's fine. It's fine. Okay, who's next?
All right. Let's move on then. We're going to finish up with a couple teams here that don't have the big five TV spiels before the season of champions on their schedule, and that they are unlikely to get invites to them. So let's start with Team Galusha, who did get the invite to the PointsBet Invitational out in Fredericton, New Brunswick. We've talked about them in the past when we have done these schedule breakdowns. They are, of course, in the interesting situation of being in the north, so it does take a little more of a commitment to travel to the south, both in terms of time and the finances of it. But they're going to play in 5 events, potentially 6 if they qualify for the Tour Challenge. It'd be tier 2 for them in all likelihood. They will play in that in Grand Prairie, but 5 events. Obviously, as I said, the PointsBet as their TV event. So they are also going to be playing in the Savile Shootout in Edmonton coming up this weekend. And then they are going to be playing in Kemptville, Ontario at the end of October. Red Deer at the middle of November. The Stu Cells in Brantford, Ontario at the start of December. So, Scott, these read to me as separate, distinct trips to the south. But what's your take on this schedule?
Yeah, that's what it looks like to me too, which seems strange, right? You'd think that you'd want to get 2 events in out of one trip at least. I do think they're being flown to the PointsBet event, right? Like,
Yes,
I think
yeah.
transportation's paid for everyone to get there. So, I guess not a lot of worry about that. And then if they fail to qualify for the Grand Slam, then they're not back again till the end of October, which, that makes some sense to the event in Kemptville. Sean, I'm not going to be around. Will you be able to go to that event?
Potentially.
We're production meeting on the air. Okay, that.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay,
Yeah, that's pretty local for us.
That could be fun. You can use my car. So and then to go to Red Deer, like, it's not that far or that costly from Yellowknife to Red Deer, or to Edmonton at least, and then a drive there. So yeah, but they all do look like specific trips, which I would have thought they'd try to cluster a bit more.
Yeah, but they're all, with the exception of Fredericton, obviously, they're all a direct flight for them, right? Like there's direct flights to Ottawa and then a quick drive to Kemptville, as you say, direct flight to Edmonton. So in terms of building out the schedule that way, to not have multiple flights kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I guess that's true. So they're sort of picked for the availability of flights. Yeah. Okay. And I think it's a good number of events. It's not too much. We know that Carrie had some health problems with her back. Was it last year, or her knee?
That was
like
knee,
that.
Yeah.
So so you don't want to overload too much. In all likelihood, they're going to be at the Scotties. They will qualify out of Northwest Territories, barring something crazy. So better to build your schedule around some stuff that you can do, and not try to push too hard, like we see some of the other teams that have new faces to try and blend in the fall, try to figure out their dynamic. This team's pretty well set and can just play the events to get a taste and try and make some money, knowing that they'll be there come February.
And we should note too that the Northwest Territories playdowns are much earlier than a lot of the other associations across the country. They're in January 11th to the 16th. The Manitoba ones, I think, start late January for the women, February for the men. So they have to set their schedule a little differently based off of that. So they're kind of fast forward a couple weeks when it comes to the play downs for them compared to everyone else across the country. So that's a bit of a wrinkle in that other teams will be playing in the slam, I think the open, while the Northwest Territories playdowns are taking place up there in beautiful Inuvik.
Yeah, that's a trek as well.
It is. Scott, in terms of logos, what do you think of their logo? It's a coat of arms of sorts with a curling stone on top of it, the broom's cross behind it, and the coat of arms is just the Northern Lights.
Yeah, I really like it. I think it looks pretty cool. Maybe we're a bit biased having that curling stone in their logo because of ours.
Yeah.
But I really like it, and the Northern Lights look super cool on the field of the coat of arms, I guess. Yeah, I like it.
All right. In terms of Asterix Watch, they have the Tier 2 event and the Scotties as the Asterix on there. Also didn't put the World Championship on their schedule.
Yeah,
so,
but Sean, they also chose to use 2 asterisks instead of just 1.
yes, they did. Want to make sure it's very clear that it's pending qualification.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
All right, let's move on to our final team that we're going to talk about here. The 2022-2023 schedule for Team Gauthier, a new look team here with, of course, Jacques Gauthier picking up the fellas who used to play with Tyler Tardy. 10 events on their schedule, only one quote unquote TV event. And it's not really even a TV event in that it is the Tour Challenge Tier 2 that they have listed on their schedule, which is probably accurate. I don't think they'd be able to get enough points to get up into Tier 1 by October, but they are all over the place here. In Western Canada, they're not coming to Ontario or East at all this season. They have already played in the Under 25 Next Gen Classic, which took place in Edmonton. Then they're playing this weekend in Leduc, Alberta. They'll be out at Okotoks at that event. Then they're taking a few weeks off, playing at a spiel in Abbotsford. Then maybe the Tier 2 of the Tour Challenge, then an event in Swift Current, then the big Penticton Spiel, then the Red Deer Spiel, and then they're playing as well Dawson Creek, British Columbia, before heading back to Manitoba for the DeKalb Super Spiel. So there's a lot of events here, Scott, kind of going back and forth across the prairies all winter here for Team Gauthier.
Yeah, 11 events. This is a team that is, sort of the prototype when we think of like who's going to be trying to get points to be able to qualify in those TV events, right? They obviously don't have any spots locked up right now, even still looking to qualify for that Tier 2 Tour Challenge. So they're going to be on the ice just pounding it for points, trying to get as many points as they can to maybe be able to qualify for these Grand Slams. It's going to be tough, but they know it. And because of that position, that's why they're playing so much. They're playing out of BC for provincial playdowns. So maybe a bit of an easier path than, well, definitely easier than if they were in Manitoba, but they should be a real team to watch in the playdowns there in BC. So yeah, I like the schedule for this team. They're doing what they should be doing, given that they're sort of starting with less than the other teams we've talked about.
Yeah, so for them, the spiels in Okotoks, probably the Okotoks might be the most important one in terms of setting up something like the Tour Challenge for them. And then Penticton and Red Deer are going to be really important for them too. Hopefully for their sakes, they get a pretty good draw early in those events and then get a couple wins under their belt and get some points banked for the rest of the season, because those are going to be the big multipliers for them. They also have on their schedule the BC Men's Open Playdown. That they're not even taking a automatic berth into the provincials for granted here. They have the provincials as a pending qualification. Didn't list the Briar at all. So they might have to play in that event in early mid-December just to get into those British Columbia men's provincials in January. I should note too, they are also playing in that Golden Wrench Classic in Tempe down in the end of January, which could be the end of their season if they haven't qualified for the Briar and don't have enough points for anything else. That would be it for them.
Yeah, that could be it. So, we'll see. They played in the Next Gen Classic already. Lost out before the playoffs on that, before the championship round. So, up and down start to the year, but something to build on.
It takes time.
Yeah, exactly. It takes time. So, yeah. They're playing out of Victoria. Huh.
Why not?
Interesting.
Lovely place.
Yeah, why not, eh? Why not, eh?
So there you have it. 6 teams, 6 schedules, very different approaches to the 2022-2023 curling season. Scott, are you more excited now that we have these schedules? We've talked about what teams are going to be doing. It's up and running.
Yeah. Honestly, I am a little more excited now, seeing which events are coming up this weekend? What can I watch on YouTube? What's going to be going on? This has really helped me get a little more amped for the season. Excited to see all these new teams too. And it's not just the same old that we've gotten used to. By 2025, we'll be bored and not wanting to watch these teams anymore. But for now, it's exciting and see how the dynamics work.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be a lot of fun to watch. Of course, we didn't even touch on the mixed doubles schedule. A lot of events and TV events for there, if you count CBC Gem as TV. I'm not sure. Why not?
Yeah, I get that on my TV.
Yeah. Okay. So a lot of TV events coming up in addition to what we talked about. So yeah, just a bit of a glimpse into how teams are approaching this upcoming season. And of course, we will be alongside for all of it with you. So if you have not yet, please do subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. Do the likes, ratings, comments, all that stuff helps other people find us and keeps us growing as we head into the new quad for the podcast. You can, of course, always head over to GameOfStonesPod.com. All the past episodes are available there, plus a link to our merch. All proceeds to the Sandra Schmirler Foundation and Food Banks Canada. We, of course, match those. And as we get into the colder weather, those hoodies and toques, a little more useful than they have been over the past few months. So head on over to GameOfStonesPod.com to check it all out. And of course, you can always let us know what you want to hear on the show. Game of Stones Podcast at gmail.com, on Twitter and Instagram at Game of Stones Pod, Game of Stones Podcast on Facebook. So that'll do it for this week. Scott, you are going to be traveling coming up. How excited are you?
I'm pretty excited. It's going to be a long trip, but worth it in the end. I got some business to take care of, and I'll enjoy while I can, but it'll be busy. It's become busy after Labor Day. Everything just gets busy, and I think, oh boy, I could really use a vacation now.
But, hey, I'll tell you though, as we record this, even though things are getting busier, hopefully things like back to school has gone well for everybody out there. Today, as we record, this is World Fair Play Day. So, never forget to play fair, respect others. Scott, how do you traditionally celebrate World Fair Play Day?
Sean, I tend to celebrate privately.
Of course. Absolutely.
No further questions.
So happy World Fair Play Day to everybody out there. We'll be back with you again next week. But until then, keep those brooms on the ice and don't dump that intern.
make the final.